Hello and welcome to part 3 of our Christmas pop cue we are writing. We are going to mix and master today. I'm using the template to bring up all the reverbs and stems that I've pre-programmed in the template. If you want to set something up like this yourself, there's a video I've done on how to do it just there. And like and subscribe, always appreciated. I'm not going to worry about these reverbs and stems to start with, so let's keep those hidden. The first thing I want to do is just move these around and group them into sets of instruments that are going to become stems. So high strings and low strings will be different. I need to put the percussion organized in a sensible way and group the other instruments to see how many channels we actually need at the end as well. Okay, see you when I've organised that and colour coded them as well. That's very important. Okay, we've got the colour coding done and I've ended up with 11 stems. So I've had to create an extra reverb and an extra stem. Just for a reminder, in case you haven't seen the video about how to make this template, the stem is simply an extra audio channel and the reverb is a new auxiliary channel strip which you make sure you add a track to, otherwise you can't rearrange it and drag it around in the mixer. But we're all set up there. What I need to do now is label all these up. That's going to be quite simple because I'm going to go from top to bottom and label them piano reverb and piano stem, and then high strings reverb, high strings stem. Once I've done that, I'm going to go through and solo each of the instruments and check the EQ curve is how I want the sound to come through. So if it's occupying space in the low end or the high end or the mids that I don't want it to influence, I'm going to shape the EQ of each of these sounds. I'm literally going to do that by looping this end section because that's likely where all the sounds are playing, so it saves me shifting around, and go through them solo one at a time. So I'll see you when I've done the labeling and gone through the EQ for each instrument. Okay, I think we're there with the EQs. I'll just show you a couple of little things that I've done. So with the horns and the trumpets, the EQ I've picked out here is for the horns I've boosted 1K and dropped at 3K ever so slightly. And in the trumpets, I've done the reverse. So they're picking out different frequencies because they are obviously both the brass instruments. I've also done a bit of panning. So remember we had the two sleigh bell tracks slightly detuned. What I've done is panned one to the right and one to the left. Remember, if you're doing this, always do stereo pan, not balance, because balance, which is the default setting, removes one of the left or the right side from the stereo image. So make sure you do stereo pan. That's very important. Now we've got this set up, I've got to go through and finish the naming of the reverbs and the stems because I got carried away with the EQ. Let me just do that. I'll be right back. And there we go. I've put all the labels in. That makes it a lot easier to understand what's going on. I now need to organize the routing so all the instruments go to the correct place instead of the stereo out. So for example, the piano will actually go to the piano stem, and I will also add a send ready to go to the piano reverb as well, so we can turn that up in the next section when we're mixing it all together. I'm just going to go along and, for example, I can do all of the high strings at once if you shift click. So I change the output to the high string stem, does it for all of them, and again with the sends we go to the high string reverb. Okay, I'm just going to do that all the way along. See you in a minute. Okay, we've done all the routing for our reverbs and stems. Now I need to go through and add any extra reverb by increasing the send levels. I'm going to check if it is the correct Air Studio setting. I've just picked one particular reverb and stuck to it, but there are settings you can tweak within this particular plugin. Doesn't matter which one you use. I would stick to the same one on the reverb buses so they are similar. I have noticed that even though in the UJAM plugin you can turn down the ambience to 0, there is still quite a lot of reverb baked into these samples. So in this particular instance, when I'm mixing, I'm going to start with those strings. They're probably not going to need anything else added to them. I'll have a play around, but what I'm then going to do is match all the other instruments, bring them in one at a time and add different amounts of reverb to get them to sit in the same space. It might involve bringing the volume down a little bit for everything, because at the moment when we play back everything, so if I just put everything into input monitoring mode, remember if you don't do that when you're using this sort of template, you won't hear anything. But if we play this end section, you can see we're clipping already, so the whole thing needs to come down in volume, so we've still got room to do some mastering at the very end. So a bit of mixing fun, adding in some reverb and getting them all to sit in the same place, and be back when I've done that. Okay, so I've gone through and done all the reverb settings. The hardest bit for this project was getting all the strings to sit in the same space as the UJam reverb had. Once that was sorted, each of the individual instruments adjusting their level of reverb became relatively straightforward. What we need to do now is print these stems. So I'm going to take them out of input monitoring mode, put them into record mode, go back to the beginning, press record, and wait for the stems to magically appear. See you in a sec. And there we go, our final stems. Remember, if you're listening back to this and you think, hold on, I still need to tweak this a little bit, don't forget you can still volume automate these stems as well to bring in different parts at different times. So you haven't lost complete control by printing to a stem. That's going to do it for part 3. The last thing I'm going to do is put on the Logic Mastering Assistant, see how much I agree with it this time, and then I'm going to play it for you as an outro. So I hope you found making this cue fun. Why not have a go at doing one yourself? Like and subscribe, always appreciated. See you in the next one. Bye for now.